It was the last night of the year, and I thought I would spend it alone, quietly celebrating. Snow fell outside, blanketing the street in white, while inside, my apartment was warm and quiet. I had a cup of tea in my hands and was scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A knock at the door. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor, maybe someone delivering a package. But the knocking was deliberate, slow almost, deliberate in a way that made my skin crawl. I froze. Another knock followed, heavier this time. My heart raced. Who could be here at this hour? I crept toward the door, peered through the peephole, and saw nothing. The hallway was empty. My pulse quickened. I debated calling someone, anyone. My phone died mid-call, screen going black. The apartment felt colder, the shadows longer, stretching unnaturally across the walls. Then I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the frosted glass of the door. Its outline was distorted, unnaturally long, and it didn't move like a human. I stepped back, terrified. Another knock, softer this time, whispered my name through the crack of the door. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, I heard footsteps inside the apartment. Slow, deliberate, moving toward me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. My candle flickered. The lights dimmed. I pressed my ear to the door, desperate to hear, desperate for a sign of reason. Then my phone lit up on its own, a message appearing with no sender. Happy New Year. I dropped the phone and stepped back, shaking. Shadows twisted unnaturally in the corners of the room, moving as if alive. I finally opened the door. Nothing. No footprints, no figure, no signs of anyone having been there. Just snow falling silently outside, covering the world in white. I told myself it was over. I was safe. But even now, months later, I hear it sometimes. The slow, deliberate knock, echoing in my mind, a haunting reminder that some presences don't leave, even when you think they're gone. It was supposed to be the perfect winter getaway. My friends and I had rented a cabin deep in the mountains, far from the noise of the city. The roads were slick with snow, the trees covered in thick white layers, and a quiet serenity hung over the landscape. At first, everything was idyllic. Crackling fire, mugs of hot chocolate, laughter echoing through the cabin. But as night fell, the warmth turned to unease. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and doors. Shadows from the trees stretched unnaturally across the walls, seeming to move even when the firelight remained steady. We laughed nervously at first, blaming it on tired eyes or the flickering flames. But soon, subtle sounds began creeping in. Soft whispers drifting through the walls, footsteps pacing above us, though we were the only occupants, and objects that shifted when no one was watching. I remember staring out the window, trying to convince myself it was all imagination. Then I noticed a figure standing among the trees, tall, black, motionless. I blinked, and it vanished. Panic rippled through the group, but we tried to act normal, joking about mountain shadows or the storm messing with our senses. Still, the feeling of being watched grew heavier, pressing down on us like a physical weight. By midnight, the snowstorm had trapped us entirely. The lights flickered and then died, plunging the cabin into darkness. The only illumination came from the fire, which suddenly seemed weak, fragile against the growing cold. The whispers became clearer, forming indistinguishable words. One friend swore she saw a shadow move across the room while no one was there. Another reported hearing someone calling her name from outside. Desperation set in. We barricaded the doors, windows, anything to protect ourselves. But it didn't stop. One friend ventured outside to check on the snow accumulation and never returned. We called out, screamed, but only the howl of the wind replied. Fear twisted us. We realized we were being toyed with, hunted perhaps, by something we couldn't see but could feel, as though the shadows themselves were alive, circling us silently. By dawn, the storm had eased. I ventured outside, hoping to find my missing friend, but the snow revealed nothing. No footprints, no traces, nothing. The cabin seemed to breathe, alive in its silence. My friends and I left immediately, vowing never to return. Even now, months later, I can't shake the memory. The shadows in that cabin, the whispers, the inexplicable cold that seemed to come from nowhere. They haunt me still. Every time I see a snow-covered forest, I remember the eyes in the darkness, always watching, patient, and waiting for the next visitor foolish enough to wander into the winter cabin shadows. It was December 31st, and I was alone in my apartment, scrolling through my phone and waiting for the New Year countdown. My friends had gone to parties, leaving me in quiet solitude. I thought it would be peaceful, a chance to reflect on the year and enjoy some calm. But at exactly 11:57 p.m., my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, a string of digits I didn't recognize. Hesitant, I answered. "Hello?" I said. Silence. Only static filled the line, crackling softly, unnerving in the otherwise quiet apartment. I was about to hang up when a faint whisper came through. It was soft, deliberate, almost teasing. "Look outside." My heart skipped a beat. I lived on the 4th floor, and the streets below were already empty, blanketed in snow. Who could possibly be down there? I pressed my ear closer. "Who is this?" I asked. No reply. Then the whisper repeated, closer this time. "It's coming. Don't turn around." My skin crawled. My instincts screamed at me to hang up and ignore it, but curiosity and fear collided in my chest. I glanced out the window. The street was empty, except for footprints in the freshly fallen snow. They hadn't been there moments ago, I was sure of it. They led to my building, and then stopped. My pulse quickened. I tried to step away, but something compelled me to watch, to wait. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. A text from the same unknown number. "You shouldn't have answered." Panic surged. The static from the earlier call returned, louder this time, like whispers multiplied, calling my name, surrounding me. I froze. The lights flickered, then dimmed. A cold draft swept through the room, brushing across my shoulders. I wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed behind me, slow, deliberate. I spun around. Nothing. Just my apartment. I wanted to run, but the apartment felt like it had grown larger, the walls stretching, elongating unnaturally. Every time I tried to leave the living room, I ended up back where I started, like the room itself was alive, bending reality around me. The clock ticked closer to midnight. My heart thundered. The whispers grew, voices overlapping, repeating my name in a chorus that chilled me to the bone. I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the stairwell, desperate to escape. But the staircase twisted, leading me back to my apartment door. And then I heard it, a soft tap, tap, tap coming from behind the door. Slow, deliberate, taunting. Midnight struck. I held my breath. The door creaked. I didn't look. When I finally dared, the hallway was empty. Nothing moved, nothing remained, except for the echo of my own fear, lingering, persistent. My phone lay on the floor, silent, displaying no new messages. The street outside was quiet, as if the world had never interrupted. Even now, months later, I can't forget the whispers, the footprints, the call that came out of nowhere. Every time the phone rings with an unknown number, I hesitate. Every time I glance outside on a snowy night, my eyes search for what shouldn't exist. And deep down, I know it's still out there, patient, waiting for the next call, the next person foolish enough to answer. I stayed late at the office that night, finishing paperwork while the rest of the building emptied out. The hallways were silent, the faint hum of the air conditioning the only sound. I decided to take the elevator down, expecting a simple, uneventful ride. The doors opened with a groan. The car was dimly lit, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly, casting strange shadows on the walls. I pressed the lobby button, and the elevator began its descent. The first few floors passed smoothly. Then, on the 5th floor, the lights went out completely. A cold draft swept through the car. I shivered. The elevator jolted, stopping between floors. Emergency lights flickered, revealing my reflection in the mirrored walls. Except, for a split second, I saw someone standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just my own reflection. My pulse raced. I hit the emergency button. Static. Then a voice whispered, low and deliberate, "You shouldn't be here." My hands trembled. "Who's there?" I asked. No response, just the elevator humming with a chilling resonance. The car lurched violently, lights flickering on and off. The floor numbers skipped erratically, 7, 12, 3, 9. I pressed the button repeatedly, desperate to stop it. But the elevator continued its erratic journey. Footsteps echoed softly, pacing in corners. But every time I turned, the car was empty. The reflection in the mirrors began to warp. My image stretched unnaturally, twisting as though the walls themselves were alive. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in the far corner. Tall, thin, eyes glowing faintly in the flickering light. It didn't move like a person. It warped, bending unnaturally, tilting its head, staring. Panic consumed me. The elevator jerked, stopping abruptly at an unknown floor. Floor 13, I realized, though no 13 existed in the building. The doors creaked open, revealing a dark hallway, silent and endless. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet moved forward against my will. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting, flickering. Each step I took seemed to stretch the hallway, elongating endlessly. Behind me, I thought I heard whispers, calling my name, closer and closer. I bolted into the stairwell, sprinting down, but each landing seemed to stretch longer than the last, until finally, I reached the lobby. I threw the doors open, and the world outside looked normal. Quiet, still, as if nothing had happened. But I know it did. Months later, I still feel it. The presence in the elevator, the distorted shadows, the whispering voice. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the faint hum of the elevator doors creaking open, and the floor numbers skipping, counting down to something I never want to see again. It was New Year's Eve, and my house was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Friends mingled, couples danced, and the scent of baked goods mixed with champagne in the warm air. The evening was perfect until he appeared. No one knew him. He wasn't on the guest list. He was tall and thin, dressed in a dark coat with a pale, expressionless face that made my skin crawl. He didn't smile, didn't drink, didn't speak to anyone. He just stood in the corner, silently observing, like a shadow among the partygoers. I approached him, forcing a polite smile. "Do I know you?" I asked. He shook his head slowly, his smile widening just slightly. Not warm, not friendly, but unnerving. He didn't answer further, simply stepping back into the shadows. My heart pounded. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was probably a friend of a friend who had wandered in. But something about him didn't feel human. At first, we ignored him, laughing nervously and focusing on our friends. But then the subtle disturbances began. Glasses slid across tables by themselves. Decorations swayed, even though the ceiling fans weren't on. The music stuttered and warped, stretching certain notes like time itself was bending. I tried to tell my friends, but no one else seemed to notice. The air felt heavy, oppressive, as though his presence was pressing down on the entire room. I watched him closely, and he didn't move like anyone I had ever seen. When he walked, he glided, almost floating a few inches above the floor. His eyes, pale and cold, seemed to pierce through me. I turned to speak to a friend, and when I looked back, he had shifted closer now, though no one else had noticed. The countdown to midnight approached, and the room erupted with excitement. Confetti cannons fired, glasses clinked, the music boomed. I glanced at the corner where he had been standing, and he was gone. Vanished. Not through the door, not into the crowd, simply gone. Panic surged through me. I searched every room, every hallway, even the backyard. No one had seen him leave. No security cameras recorded anything. There were no signs of forced entry, no tracks in the snow outside. It was as if he had never existed in the first place. A week later, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for letting me in." My blood ran cold. I never responded. The number disappeared. Even now, months later, I can't shake the memory. Whenever I host a gathering, I feel eyes on me from the corners of the room. A chill runs down my spine when laughter fades or music stutters. Sometimes when I glance toward a shadowed corner, I swear I see him. Tall, thin, pale, patient, waiting. I've learned that some presences don't belong to the world we know. They watch, they linger, and they return to places where doors were left open, even for just a moment. And I know deep down that if he came back tonight, I might not even notice until it was too late. The memory of that night is etched into my mind, a reminder that not all guests are invited, and some never truly leave. For months, I had been hearing footsteps above my apartment. At first, I ignored them, assuming it was a neighbor moving around, maybe renovating or rearranging furniture. But the apartment above mine had been empty for years. Vacant. No electricity, no furniture, nothing. Yet every night, without fail, there were footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth. At first, it was almost comforting, a mundane sound that lured me to sleep. But gradually, the rhythm of the steps became unnerving. They didn't follow the pattern of normal footsteps. Sometimes they paused for long moments, as if listening, then continued, heavier than before, echoing through the walls. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering who or what could be up there. Other disturbances began to creep in. Cups and glasses shifted on the counters when I wasn't looking. Books toppled from shelves. Doors creaked open slowly, though no breeze touched the apartment. At night, I started hearing whispers through the floorboards, unintelligible at first. Soft murmurs, like someone muttering secrets under their breath. Then the whispers grew louder, clearer, repeating my name, and sometimes describing things I hadn't shared with anyone. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that I was stressed or tired. But one night, curiosity overcame fear. I decided to investigate. I climbed the stairs to the empty apartment above. Each step echoed unnaturally in the silent hallway. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then, a sudden thump, sharp and deliberate, came from inside. My heart pounded. I knocked. Nothing. I backed away, trembling, and that's when it happened. A cold hand brushed my shoulder. I spun around, my chest tight with panic. The hallway was empty. Nothing but shadows stretching along the walls. My rational mind refused to accept what I'd felt. I fled down the stairs, never looking back. I moved out a week later, unable to tolerate the oppressive feeling that had settled in the apartment. Friends who visited reported the same disturbances. Footsteps pacing above, whispers in empty hallways, shadows flickering in corners. Some even swore they saw the door to the apartment above creak open, though no one was there. Months later, I still hear the echoes in my mind. The rhythm of those footsteps, slow and deliberate, returning in dreams, haunting memories that won't fade. It's as if the apartment above was never empty, and whatever was inside is still walking, still listening, still waiting. I warn anyone who moves into that building. The apartment above may appear abandoned, but some presences don't need walls or furniture to exist. They linger in silence, pacing through the night, observing those below, patient and relentless. And once you notice them, you can never fully escape. It was late December, just days before New Year's Eve, and I was taking the last train home from visiting family. The carriage was nearly empty, snowflakes streaking past the windows in a blur of white, painting the world outside in silence. The ride had started quietly, ordinary. Only a few passengers scattered along the seats, lost in their own worlds. Some stared out the window, others whispered softly into phones. But the overall atmosphere was peaceful, almost calming. Then I noticed it. At the far end of the carriage, near the last row of seats, a figure stood motionless, tall, thin, and strangely still. There was no luggage, no coat, no discernible features, just an outline, like a shadow frozen in place. I blinked, convinced I was seeing things. When I looked again, it was gone. Perhaps exhaustion had finally caught up with me, I told myself. My mind playing tricks. But it reappeared moments later. Closer this time, just behind a row of empty seats, perfectly still. I tried to move toward it, to see it clearly. But each time I approached, it vanished, reappearing somewhere else in the carriage. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting elongated shadows along the walls. With every flicker, the figure seemed to grow taller, its presence more menacing. A chill ran down my spine. The air inside the carriage thickened, oppressive, almost suffocating. I heard whispers, faint at first, indistinct murmurs that seemed to float just beyond comprehension. Then the whispers grew louder, overlapping, forming broken words that seemed to know my name. Panic started to claw at my chest. I wanted to escape, but every step I took toward the conductor only seemed to make the carriage stretch longer, twisting reality in ways that didn't make sense. The figure moved again, but not like a human. It didn't walk, it glided, bending around obstacles as though the laws of physics didn't apply to it. My pulse thundered in my ears. Each time I turned, the figure was closer, yet still far enough away that I could never confront it. A breath fogged the glass of the windows, hands trembling as I gripped the nearest pole. Suddenly, the train jerked violently, screeching to a halt in the middle of nowhere. I bolted for the door, bursting into the snowy night. Cold air hit me like a shockwave, and I ran as fast as I could, never glancing back. When I finally did, the train was gone. No tracks, no sound. Nothing but the silence of the snow-covered landscape. Even now, months later, I dream of that ride. The empty carriage, flickering lights, whispers that echo in the back of my mind, and that impossibly tall figure. It waits patiently, silently, somewhere between the tracks and the shadows, ready to appear for the next passenger brave or foolish enough to board that late-night train. Sometimes, when I pass a train station at night, I find myself holding my breath. For a moment, I wonder if it is the same train, gliding through the darkness, carrying that figure in the shadows, still watching, still waiting. Some journeys are meant to end safely, but some trains never truly arrive. They linger, alive with something beyond comprehension, patient, deliberate, and hungry for attention. It was New Year's Eve, and the house was alive with celebration. Twinkling lights hung from every corner, cookies baked in the oven, and the smell of pine filled the air. My niece, only 7 years old, ran through the living room, squealing with excitement, while the adults laughed and chatted. Everything seemed perfect until she tugged on my sleeve. "Look," she whispered, her small hand shaking slightly. I followed her gaze to the backyard window and froze. There, just beyond the fence, stood a shadow. Tall, faceless, swaying gently, unnaturally. My first instinct was to laugh, to dismiss it as her imagination. But she described it in detail. Details she couldn't have known. Limbs bent in impossible angles, glowing eyes that never blinked, the slow, deliberate sway. My heart raced. I moved closer to the window, straining to see. The shadow remained perfectly still, as if it had been waiting. My niece clutched my hand, trembling. I wanted to tell her it was nothing, that it would go away. But deep down, I knew better. As the evening progressed, the shadow appeared again, closer this time. It shifted silently across the yard, moving between trees, through the snow, though the snow remained undisturbed. Every time I looked, it seemed to be watching, patient, waiting. Curtains and doors offered no protection. Even the family dog, normally brave and playful, cowered in the corner, refusing to enter the room. The whispers began next. Soft at first, just beyond comprehension. They seemed to come from the shadows themselves, growing louder as midnight approached. I could almost make out words, my niece's name, mine, things I couldn't explain. The air grew colder, each breath sharp and biting. When the clock struck 12, I dared to glance out the window again. The shadow was closer now, right at the edge of the patio. I froze, unable to move, unable to speak. My niece held my hand tightly, her wide eyes reflecting terror I could hardly comprehend. The figure did not advance, but its presence was oppressive, filling every corner of the backyard, pressing against the house itself. By dawn, the shadow vanished as silently as it had appeared. I breathed again, shaking, exhausted. I tried to convince myself it was gone for good, that the events of the night had been a nightmare fueled by my niece's imagination. but the memory lingered, sharp and vivid. Months later, the fear hasn't left us. Every winter, when the nights grow long and the air turns cold, I feel it again, the patient, watchful eyes just beyond sight. Always there, waiting. My niece still wakes occasionally, whispering about the shadow that swayed in the yard. And I can't bring myself to dismiss her fears. I've come to realize that some presences don't need to enter the house to haunt it. They wait outside, patient, deliberate, observing every movement, every sound. Some shadows don't belong to this world. They linger, never blinking, never leaving, and always waiting for the next moment when someone dares to notice them. Even now, when I glance out my window on a quiet winter night, I find myself scanning the yard, anticipating movement where there should be none. The memory of that New Year's Eve shadow is etched into my mind. A chilling reminder that some watchers never sleep, and sometimes they choose to reveal themselves just long enough for you to see. It was a week before Christmas when the package appeared. I wasn't expecting anything, and there was no name on the label, no return address. Just a small, neatly wrapped box. Curiosity mixed with unease as I carried it inside. The wrapping paper was delicate, almost too perfect, and beneath it lay a music box, carved with strange, intricate symbols that I didn't recognize. I lifted the lid, and a soft, haunting melody began to play. At first, it was soothing, gentle, almost comforting. But then a chill ran down my spine. The tune twisted, slowing unnaturally, the notes stretching in ways that made my skin crawl. My cat hissed, bristling fur raised, and darted out of the room. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination. That night, things began to change. Whispers drifted through the apartment, faint and unintelligible at first, like the wind brushing through cracks in the walls. Then, the whispers grew clearer. Names, secrets, things I had never told anyone. Objects shifted subtly. Books on shelves tipped, chairs moved a few inches. The music box played on its own, the melody looping in a way that made my teeth ache, twisting the sense of time around it. I decided to get rid of it. I wrapped it carefully and placed it outside, on the snowy street. I hoped that would be the end. When I returned the next day, the music box was back inside, sitting neatly on my doorstep as if it had never been moved. Panic set in. I tried hiding it, locking it away, but it always returned, accompanied by the same eerie music and the unsettling whispers that seemed to follow me through the apartment. By New Year's Eve, exhaustion had overtaken me. I could barely think straight. The whispers now formed commands I dared not follow, insisting I do things I couldn't comprehend. Shadows stretched in corners, twisting unnaturally when the music played. I felt watched constantly, as if something unseen was observing my every movement, patient and deliberate. I finally abandoned the music box in a field outside town, leaving it buried beneath a thick layer of snow. I never saw it again, at least not physically. But months later, on quiet nights, I swear I hear the haunting melody drifting through the air. It's faint, distant, but unmistakable. I close my windows, pull the curtains. But the sound persists. Sometimes, when I walk past my old apartment building or hear a soft, melodic chime in the distance, my heart pounds, and I feel that same presence, patient, relentless, and unseen. The music box taught me a chilling lesson. Some gifts are never truly yours to give away. Some things choose their owner, and some presences linger, bending reality just enough to remind you that nothing is ever gone entirely. I now approach every unexpected package with dread, every knock at the door with suspicion, because some things return, no matter how far you run, no matter how firmly you try to forget. Even now, I can't listen to music without feeling it watching me. I can't walk down quiet streets without imagining it sliding silently through the shadows. That music box may be gone physically, but its melody haunts me. A reminder that some presences never truly leave. And sometimes they wait for the perfect moment to return. It was a bitterly cold evening. The kind where the snow falls so thickly that the world is erased beneath a blanket of white. I was driving home from a late shift. Roads slick and visibility low. The streetlights barely penetrated the storm, casting only faint halos in the swirling snow. My car's tires crunched along the ice, the engine humming as I navigated cautiously. Then I saw it. A figure standing on the roadside, shrouded in snow and darkness. At first, I thought it was a stranded traveler, someone who had lost their way. But the figure moved. Wrong. It didn't walk, not like a human. Its steps were stiff, deliberate, almost gliding above the snow. Tall, unnaturally thin, and featureless, it watched me silently. I shivered and blinked, and it was gone. I tried to shake it off, telling myself the storm played tricks on the eyes. But the feeling didn't leave. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I thought I saw shapes in the snow behind me, shadows that moved in ways the world shouldn't allow. Panic began to creep in. My pulse quickened. I tried taking different turns, small detours, hoping to lose whatever it was that seemed to be following me. The snowstorm intensified. The visibility was almost zero, yet I could feel it, always there, patient, keeping pace without making a sound. The highway twisted unnaturally, or so it seemed. Every straight road felt longer, every bend sharper, as though the world had shifted to keep me inside the storm with it. The car's headlights illuminated nothing but white, yet I could sense the figure behind, in the corner of my vision, just beyond the glow. By the time I reached my neighborhood, my nerves were frayed. I thought I was safe. The streets were empty, quiet and familiar. I parked in my driveway, heart hammering, and rushed inside. The warmth of the house should have comforted me, but it didn't. Something followed. Later, when I checked the snow outside, I noticed footprints leading directly to my door. Large, uneven, impossible to identify. They stopped abruptly at the threshold, as though the figure had vanished into thin air. I didn't open the door that night. I stayed awake, listening to the wind howl, waiting, fearing that it might return. Even now, months later, winter storms make me pause. Every time the snow falls thickly, I remember the featureless figure, the unnatural movements, the silent stalking. I imagine those footprints appearing again, leading up to my door, the snow parting for an unseen presence that refuses to be ignored. I've learned to respect storms now, not just for the cold or the ice or the danger of the roads, but for the things that might move within them. Some presences are patient, waiting for the perfect conditions to appear. They don't need doors or windows to enter your world. They follow silently, invisibly, and sometimes, when you think you are safe, they are already there. That snowstorm taught me a terrifying lesson. Some watchers never rest. They wait, patient and deliberate, stalking the blind spots of the world, choosing the perfect moment to make themselves known. And once they've noticed you, even for an instant, you cannot forget them. You can only hope that the next time the snow falls, you remain unseen.